Well, hello everybody, Jason up, New Revolution Cave. Still disarrayed cave. And you know that bothers me more than anything when the cave is in a state of chaos, in a state of confusion. I just can't cope. And of course we have one person to thank for that, one Canadian to thank for that. But I will get it into a state of calm, hopefully in the next couple of days. The Nintendo games are creating a lack of calm because there are still so many that have yet to be sold, but they are being sold slowly. Some to you folks, some to others. Why am I drinking coffee, you say? Well, because I have a headache and I'm very tired and I've taken a couple of naps today and I'm still tired, and sometimes coffee wakes me up. I don't know. I think that's what it's supposed to do. Believe it or not, this is Bob Marley coffee straight from Canada. In fact, it's straight from my Canadian mum. That's right, Colin from Canada's mom gifted me some Bob Marley coffee, and I drink it black. Because then it's not coffee, then it's creamer and sugar. I hate when people do that, right? They drink coffee or they slurp soup and can't stand that sound. Can't stand that sound. I think most terrorist attacks and disasters were caused by somebody making that sound. But anyway, look, I've got to clean the room. We're going to go hopefully to Lowe's this weekend, hopefully to the home improvement store, and buy a couple of buy some 2x4s. That's right, some 2x4s, and get the bench built. We need the build to happen so that I can settle into this room again. And okay, so but first, before then, we're just going to talk about stuff. I looked out the window today. It was a little snowy, and I've showed you a little picture. The pool ladder, as you can see, if you can make it out in all that white, a white ladder blending into the snow. If you can make it out, that's my pool ladder that my children were playing with. And I had found out that they were playing, they were trying to knock each other off the ladder into the snow. The ladder will sit in the snow, that one of them will climb. It'll be kind of like a ladder match. And they were playing on the ladder, trying to dump each other off into the snow. And I thought, how lovely. How lovely. See, that's the difference between 80's kids and their mother, because their mother says, they're going to break the pool ladder. And I told them that you would be mad when you got home and saw the pool ladder in the middle of the yard. And I thought, what were they doing on it? And she said, well, they were climbing on it. And then Liam came and said, no, we were, Finley was on one side and I was on the other, and we were trying to push each other off into the snow. And I thought, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it made me think of the stuff that we did in the snow. So, hey, do you remember playing in the snow when you were kids in the 80's? Do you remember playing in the snow when you were kids in the 80's? Because I kind of do. It's not one of those episodes where I say, because I sure don't. Because I kind of do. I was never a big fan of the snow. I like to look at it out my window. I like to be stuck in the house. I like to miss school as a result of a snowstorm, even today. But I don't enjoy necessarily being out in it. I'm not a winter sports kind of guy. I've never had skis on my feet. I don't like to snowshoe. I don't want to hike in the snow. I don't love the snow. But as a kid, I think either you had to be okay with the snow, or else you were going to stay indoors all winter and miss out on all kinds of fun things that your friends were doing. For me, the theme of winter play was always a fort. It was always lodging of some kind. It was always creating a living space. Forts and snow in my 1980s kid brain just went hand in hand. And thankfully for me, it was also in the same brains as all the kids in the neighborhood. Forts were it in the winter. In fact, I had always fantasized about the igloo fort, the kids' winter igloo style fort. And the only way that that could happen is if you had a dad who somehow was able to create a massive mound of snow. Or if you had mounds of snow at the end of your driveways like we did back then, and we still do today, obviously. If the snow plow comes, or if you have a snow plow guy, or even if you have a snow blower and it's been a bad winter, you could create a mound of snow at the end of your driveway, and we would dig into that snow and create a little dome of fun. That's until our parents tried to terrify us by telling us that the snow would collapse on us and we would die. And it worked, because even today I don't like building out mounds of snow. I don't want to do it. I don't want my kids to do it. It's just terrifying. I've heard stories and it worked, so I don't do that. But there are still multiple ways of building forts in the snow, and because we didn't have the internet, you would always just see photos, or you would see it on TV. You would see these fantastically intricate snow forts, and I was never that much of an artist or a designer, as I'm sure that you can tell from some of my home improvements. But the greatest tool a kid could have would be one of these snow block makers. And I loved this thing. We would get one every year for Christmas. We'd get one every year at the beginning of even at the beginning of winter before Christmas. We'd probably get one on clearance in March. We would always have these snow brick makers that you would pack with snow and tip over and give a couple taps and lift it up, and you should have this perfect rectangle brick that you could then, in theory, go around and stack and make this amazing fort. In theory. The reality of that was you needed, first of all, you needed the right snow, or else you would just have a powder, a collapsed powder of snow as you tried to build it. But I never got as far as one wall, because I would not build it big enough. So I would only have a 4x4 square maybe that I would build out, because I was a child and that was big enough. So I would have just this little square. And if you have one of those brick makers, you know that you can, with a smaller area, you can only build it up about yay high or so. You know, you because you're putting the bricks on top of the spaces in the bricks, and I never figured out how to actually do it right. So I would have this tiny little wall that eventually me and my sisters, or me and the kids in the neighborhood, would just run and smash through. That was pretty much it. I never actually completed a snow fort as a kid. I never did. I never got it built up to where I wanted. And my dad would always say, "Oh, why don't we use these however many gallon, what are they, 10-gallon buckets? You know, if you really fill that up and tip it over, you could really stack these massive columns." That's impossible. That can't be done. That's like 50 pounds of snow that I'm not going to be able to lift, first of all, and second of all, it's not going to be able to sit on top of each other. They're not going to be stackable. So I would try that multiple times and fail. My dad also suggested building the walls, and then he would give it a light spray with water, and they would turn to ice. And in my mind, he was a genius. In my mind, I could see this ice castle, fortnight, I could see this ice castle in my brain because my dad said, just we'll go out there and we'll mist it with some water. And I was just envisioning this beautiful, sparkling, multi-room, possibly multi-layered ice castle. That never happened either. So I didn't get the forts. Snowmen, everybody else's snowmen always looked better. Me and my sisters could never really build a snowman. It would always turn into just a snow blob. It would just be one of the body parts of the snowman, and that was about it. We could never figure out how to actually hulk up the middle body part or the head. We just were like, this is impossible. How can you lift this onto? We could get the base, we get a nice base, but then that's it. We couldn't get the other two up there. I've seen beautiful snowmen all around the neighborhood for 48 years now, and I've never actually built one. Snowball fights I was never a fan of because they hurt, so I never wanted to get hit in the face with a snowball. Sledding is certainly a good time. The kids do sled. We have a couple of hills where they sled. I was always a fan of sledding. The only we would go sledding more with my dad. That was more of the divorced dad thing to do in the winter. And he bought us these things called snow tubes, and they were inflatable sleds, round tubes, and they were great. And I don't mean to say everything was better back then, but these tubes, the quality of the rubber was so good that they were almost like tires, and they would not deflate. In fact, my dad still had one of our snow tubes at his house way up in his garage rafters that never deflated. We took it, and I used it in my pool, and the thing's 40 years old, and it never deflated until my children were jumping on it from the pool ladder, and they didn't pop it, but they ripped out the center area where you'd sit. So now it's just like a donut, but it still lasted. It was crazy. It lasted 40 years. Now the snow tubes that you buy and blow up, we've actually popped them going down the hill. Nowadays, we'll get them home. I'll fill them up. We'll sled, and then by the end of the sledding, they're losing air because they're junk. But it was better back then. You knew that you were not going to have a good time sledding when you had one of these sleds, because these things were potential murder weapons. They were no fun. I hated those, and because those are the sleds that the generation prior to us had. They had those death traps. I'd always fantasized about this sled because I just thought it was probably the greatest thing ever. You could steer. You could probably just turn sharp. I mean, I envisioned myself just traveling all around the town with one of these sleds. I don't know why, just because it had a steering wheel. It could obviously power itself. Never got one. Never, ever, ever got one. Saw them all the time in catalogs. Never got one. I remember being extremely wet all the time. Our gloves were not always of the best quality. In fact, sometimes we wore socks on our hands to go out and play in the snow. I remember trying to peel off layers of soaking wet pants, snow down your pants. You get them off, your legs are bright maroon because they're just wrecked by the snow and the ice. And honestly, it's just a miserable experience. And we've often had to peel the same pants off the children now as they go sledding, and there's always snow down somebody's back, and that's a horrible feeling. And I don't care for it. I don't care for snow adventures. I just don't. I could take it or leave it, folks. In fact, I could leave it, honestly. I like the snow for Christmas. I like it to be snowy. I don't care to be out in it or play in it. So, but my kids haven't missed out. They've done plenty of sledding, and we've had plenty of wrestling matches in the front yard in the snow, but it's not something that I is on my top 5 list of things I did as a kid. So anyway, I'm sure some of you had snow adventures. Do indeed put them below. If you mastered the fort, let me know, because at almost 50, I'm still trying to build a snow fort that I can just hang out in and just feel accomplished. Never done it, but let me know how to do it. I'll see you next time. Good night now.